Hello, everyone, and welcome to Day 3 of Travel Webcast Week with Baxter Media, your partner in travel. I'm Dan McDonald, Webinar Manager for Travel Webcast Week. This week, we've been exploring the future of travel and tourism in a post-COVID-19 world with experts from across the industry, discussing the topics, trends, and issues that matter most to Canadian travel agents and industry professionals right now. Today, the theme is Look Local, a new perspective on packaging and selling Canada. Our first segment will feature an expert Q&A with Charlotte Bell, President and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. Our second segment will consist of a panel discussion similar to yesterday's format, and we'll wrap up with a short case study presented by Harry Patel, General Manager of Motorhome Travel Canada. Our moderator for today is Baxter Media's Executive Editor, Bob Mowat. You all know him and love him, and he moderated Day 1 of Travel Webcast Week as well. Just before we get into things, I'd like to let our viewers know that at the end of each segment, you'll have a chance to ask questions to our panelists. To do so, just type them into the Q&A box found in your Zoom toolbar, and those questions will be answered in due time. If you happen to be watching this on Facebook Live, feel free to submit questions to the comments box. And remember, this is a live session, so your patience is appreciated during any technical difficulties that might arise. Okay, Bob, I'll now hand things over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Much appreciated. The conventional wisdom in the industry these days is that the summer of 2020 is going to be all about selling Canada. That's where the opportunities are. That's where people are going to be traveling. But what's less clear, however, is how that is actually going to play out. And this afternoon, to try to figure that out, Baxter Media has brought together a group of experts on domestic travel in Canada to explore this and other topics. And right now, I have the pleasure of having a chat with TIAC's President and CEO, Charlotte Bell. Charlotte, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to start, I guess, at the beginning, if there is a beginning, and ask you, where is the Canadian tourism industry at right now? And is it paused? Is it preparing for recovery? Or has the recovery started?
Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today. I guess in answer to your question, the situation is fluid at the moment, and it changes day by day, it seems, with some provinces and territories slowly reopening. But that said, and despite this, I think the situation remains very challenging at the moment. Starting with the bad news, everyone knows borders are currently closed between the US and Canada. And this was just extended to July 21st. So we're still under a travel advisory also prohibiting foreign visitors from other countries from entering Canada. So this means that international travel is on pause for the moment. And certainly as of April 2020, StatCan numbers showed a 98% decline in international travel to Canada overall. We just got these numbers. So year to date, we are now down 44% internationally, including US arrivals. So as long as the borders remain closed, international numbers are going to continue to be abysmal, of course. And we're going to see much of the same thing for May and June and July, I'm assuming. So this is challenging for the industry in its entirety. But especially challenging for inbound tour operators who, those who operate local tours, markets and businesses who depend to a large extent on international arrivals. And also, I would think the luxury travel attractions who tend to also attract a lot of international travelers would also be especially impacted by this. But of course, everyone is. Domestically, I think we can say that we're at the very early stages of recovery, and how well markets do is going to be dependent on the region and on a number of factors. Canada has 10 provinces, 3 territories, and each one of those provinces and territories, of course, have the authority to address the pandemic in their own way. So rules for reopening and conditions are vastly different from one province and territory to the other. This is, of course, problematic. There are still several provinces and territories requiring quarantine if people want to travel there. And we expect these conditions are going to continue to change over time. I also hope to see more interprovincial openness in the coming days and weeks which I think would also make a difference. And we know that yesterday, the Atlantic provinces announced a travel bubble beginning July 3rd. And those premiers have indicated that after a couple of weeks, they're going to reevaluate possibilities to extend this to other Canadian provinces. So that is a positive sign in terms of things starting to reopen, certainly in one region. And we're hearing other rumors about possible bubbles between BC and the Yukon.
I also heard this morning that BC has gone to phase 3, so they're allowing for movement within the province. But I did hear that Yukon, Northwest Territories, and BC seem to be close to some agreement where they will allow movement between those 3 areas, which is great. Small steps, baby steps. And
it is.
So what about the conventional wisdom, domestic or hyper local tourism? Is that going to salvage something of the summer season? Is it reasonable to expect that?
I think we can reasonably expect that some regions are going to be able to salvage some part of the summer. I also think it's reasonable to say that the summer is going to be extremely challenging for the industry overall. There's no question about it. Without any international arrivals, that's going to be very challenging. And with still, there's limited mobility across the country, and that may start to reopen, and we're seeing some early signs of that happening. But of course, that's going to be challenging. In terms of hyperlocal, I think it's going to depend on the province and the region. I had a chat with a DMO in Quebec yesterday, and they were telling me that in their area, hyperlocal seems to be done, that they are actually seeing regional travel, with most visitors coming from other parts of that province. So I thought that was very interesting. I don't think that's the case everywhere. I think, as I said, things are going to be evolving differently in different regions, different provinces. As a result of where things stand, I'd say that there are 3 factors that we should consider in trying to figure out which regions are going to recover a little bit faster domestically. Right. And those 3 things would be, the ability of the province to manage the spread of the disease, the willingness of the province to open its borders domestically to other provinces, right. And of course, what is the reliance on domestic travel? For instance, I think a province like PEI is one example where you would have a higher reliance on domestic travel than you would see maybe in other provinces. So I think that might be able to help them to some extent to recover domestically a little faster. But again, I don't want anything I'm saying to sound like problem solved. We're back in business as we normally would. This is not a normal situation. So I think, reopening interprovincial borders is going to be critical in getting things moving and salvaging a portion of the summer. But it's not going to return things to pre-COVID levels for anybody at this time.
There was a lot of conversation at one point in time about small communities and the concerns they have about coming into the communities, not because they don't want to welcome them, but because they don't have the medical infrastructure in case there's an outbreak of COVID. Are you hearing much about that from communities that you're talking to and tourism associations in those smaller communities?
I'm hearing some of that, but we've also heard other stories where people have found some nasty notes on their windshields when traveling between provinces. We have seen some negative social media posts also, and some unfavorable resident sentiment survey results, because when you start tracking that, you can see there's a nervousness. There's no question about it. I think people are nervous. Then you'd also seen places like Revelstoke, BC, where they're leaving notes on Albertans who are crossing over and welcoming them, and saying, we look forward to welcoming you to our community. So, it's not surprising either that people are nervous about this. I mean, they're hearing from health authorities and politicians on a daily basis that, you have to stay home, or there are risks of getting very sick, or maybe even dying. So I think there is a heightened sensitivity there. And it's also understandable that for small communities who have limited capacity to deal with an outbreak, that it is important, of course, for them to ensure that they have the resources to be able to deal with something like that. It's not been the most overwhelming message that I have received, but we have certainly heard about that. We are working with the federal government actually to see if we can start sending maybe a different message, one that focuses on what people can do as opposed to focusing on what they cannot do. And I also noticed, Premier Horgan in BC recently was making some encouraging statements mentioning his own travel plans while still reminding people, of course, to adhere to safety measures and to be cautious. Yeah. So I think we need to hear more from our leaders on this. And we're certainly shifting some of our advocacy efforts to ensure that there's more positive messaging coming through without being irresponsible, of course, but basically telling people what they can do.
And you talked about border closures, self-isolation, quarantine, travel advisors. I'm wondering if Kayak has a plan that they're presenting to government on how maybe to ease these restrictions so that maybe there's a little more flow of international visitors potentially. I mean, what's the plan?
Yeah, we're not getting a lot of receptivity at the federal level in terms of reopening foreign borders, the border with the U.S., or allowing other foreign nationals coming into Canada. We know that the government just extended that U.S. Canada border restriction, but we are working with the National Tourism Roundtable to get some dialogue going about reopening the borders, because we need to start talking about this. The reality is, no, it may not be tomorrow, but countries around the world are creating safe corridors, for example, with other countries. The EU, for example, is doing this. Germany has opened up to 28 or 29 countries in the EU. So we're doing a lot of media work and also letter writing campaigns to get the attention of decision makers. And we continue to work as a Team Canada coalition and adding to our voice by working together and other voices to strengthen the message. We're also working with the provincial and territorial associations to bolster our efforts on the domestic front. So far, we want to make sure that Canadians know where they can go and what they can do. So, for example, a new app was just released this morning. And it's called Time to Travel. You can find it at timetotravel.ca. I know there's an appetite out there for more information. I get tons of emails and phone calls from people saying, I don't know where I can go. So we are trying to do that. Again, with the message that we need to be able to tell people what they can do and not just focus on what they cannot do. And of course, messaging from our leaders is a priority. So we're also asking all of the provincial and territorial leaders to coordinate reopening. But certainly, our efforts continue in trying to open up that dialogue, which I think is very, very important with the federal government in terms of border closures and what we can do in terms of slowly rebuilding that.
Yeah, no, this is sort of a natural follow-up to what you've been saying, and I didn't on my question sheet, but I mean,
yeah.
Has there been any conversation about, I know the US is problematic right now, and I think I'll have to admit it, but what about Europe? And what about the concept of air bridges where, the two destinations with lower transmission rates? Is that a subject of discussion right now?
It's something that we definitely want to discuss with the government. At this point, as I said, we have not had a lot of receptivity in terms of opening any of the borders. And I was just talking about those safe corridors, which of course we're seeing in Europe and in other places. So I really am, it is something that we are pushing for. There's no question about it.
Okay, so now that you've talked to me, you'll be up there tomorrow knocking on the door, whoever you need to talk to, right?
That's right.
I guess one of the questions I've been struggling with is there's the need to reopen so people can open their businesses, get back to work. I mean, this doesn't just apply to the tourism industry. And I'm struggling with where the balance is between reopening the economy and everyone's responsibility to each other and protect against the transmission of COVID-19. And I'm wondering, in terms of the planning and the discussions that TIAC is having with its members and with government on that issue. Not an easy issue.
No, it's not an easy issue. I would say, balance is definitely key. Certainly the health and safety of visitors is absolutely critical, and I think it has to be a top priority in any plan to reopen. There's no question about it. This is part of all of our discussions. It's our top recommendation in terms of our recovery plan that we filed with the government, and it will continue to be a top priority. At the same time, I've said this often, we're going to be living with this virus for some time, and I think we do need to learn to live with it. So we can't just keep people locked up. There is an appetite for people to resume some activities. And, Canadians can get a haircut, a massage, shop for groceries, go to the dentist. And all these businesses and services are putting measures in place to keep people safe. Then getting out and exploring and resuming business activities in Canada, I think should also be permitted as long as we're putting safety measures in place. So we're having a lot of discussion about that. And of course, this is a new normal, right? We've learned a lot over the last few months on what measures can be put in place to keep people safe. And every sector in the industry has worked hard to put safety measures in place, from hotels, airlines, airports, meetings and conventions, and tour operators. There's a roadmap to minimize transmission in this sector, just like other sectors of the economy.
Now, Canadian travel presses readers are travel agents, tour operators, generally doing outbound. And I'm just wondering if you see opportunities for them to sell Canada. You mentioned all the small operators that are not getting the business from outside of the country. Is there a way for them to connect with those operators and see what they can do? I mean, even within a province, if you can't do it from without a province. I mean, is there any way for, discussions or something to happen there?
I think the industry is having those discussions right now. As you just said, internationally, I think those opportunities exist for booking later travel. Right. And I know tour operators certainly are working on future bookings. I think it's challenging because there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think when people find themselves in a situation where they don't really know what's going to happen down the road, I think that can make it very challenging. So I completely appreciate the stress that tour operators are feeling right now, because we don't know when the borders are going to reopen. I also know that, pivoting to local or regional offerings is going to be challenging for a number of tour operators. I'm curious to know to what extent that is even possible for any of them to do that at this time. But I have heard that some tour operators are looking at those opportunities. But again, pivoting your entire business overnight is a very challenging thing and not going to be easy to do. I think that for those who do offer domestic opportunities, making sure that you're providing as much information as possible on safety measures in place when people arrive at their destination, I think is going to be paramount. Posting this information, making it part of the information package that visitors receive is going to be crucial. And I know they all know this already. The information is widely available, including on our website, the Hotel Association, the airlines, all of those websites. The World Travel and Tourism Council also developed global standards, which are available. So there are other tools. Obviously, I know ACTA is very, very active, obviously, and has a lot of information on their site where people can go to get information, and also information on training programs, as well as Tourism HR Canada. I'd encourage you to consult the new Time to Travel app, because it was just launched today, but it might also provide some opportunities there for domestic travel within the country and within different provinces or across the provinces.
I know you've talked to a lot of people. I've heard you on, I think, every station on the radio in the last little while. I'm just wondering, with all those interviews and talking to people, Is there a question that you haven't been asked that you think should be asked and needs to be answered?
Well, I have been asked an awful lot of questions. Certainly one question I've never been asked, and of course it's top of mind for me, and that is what keeps me up at night. Because, you know, we're living through this crisis, and it's a daily thing, right? So what keeps me up at night, frankly, is 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very concerned about 2020, obviously, but there is a lot of uncertainty right now, and where we go from here into next year makes me nervous, because, you know, we don't have a crystal ball, and we don't know exactly how things are going to unfold, and we're all hoping for the best, obviously, and hoping for a vaccine to be developed so that we can move forward and get out of this crisis. But certainly, the other thing I think I am concerned that the government is focused on programs to support, you know, they're more broadly designed to support individuals, to some extent broadly to help some businesses, but in terms of something longer term for recovery, for an economic engine like tourism, I'm really hoping that we're going to see some progress at that end. So those are things that I'm definitely very concerned about right now, that no one has really asked me about specifically.
Well, good question. I'll call you when I need more questions. Thank you very much.
Great.
Last question, and then we'll take some questions from
Sure.
the audience. And you touched on it there, but you know, do you see a way forward for the Canadian tourism industry? And if so, what do you see? What is it?
Oh my goodness. So, you know, I always believe there's a way forward, no matter what. It's not without challenges. This industry is living through its darkest moment, and I think it is very challenging. I also think that, you know, this is a time when we're learning to do things differently, which I find really interesting. And I'm hearing that from a lot of people. And actually, we're experiencing that even at TIAC. We're looking at doing some of the things that we've done in the past. For instance, our own Congress is going virtual in the fall. And we're excited about that for a couple of reasons, but mainly because I think we're going to learn to maybe expand the offering that we've given the industry for so many years. We're never going to stop having a face-to-face Congress. There's no question that we are going to continue to do that. But this provides us with another way of doing things and something that we can add on. It's an enhancement. So I think if we look ahead and wonder, you know, where are we going? What is the way forward? I think that some of the positive things that we can take out of this, as I said, because it's such a challenging time, is to take those small nuggets where you can find them. I know a lot of people are doing things very differently. I hear from DMOs and other organizations saying, "Oh, we're partnering with these people, and we haven't done that in the past, and this is looking very successful. And I don't think we're ever going to go back to exactly the way we did things before." So I think that's part of moving forward, I guess, and making the best out of a very, very difficult situation. But in terms of our way forward, I think, you know, we are going to need more support from the government to get us through this. There's absolutely no question about that. And let's all hope and pray that a vaccine is developed and distributed very as quickly as possible, so that we can get back to some level of normalcy after this. I think collaboration, the fact that we are all working together more than we ever have in the past, is going to help us perhaps get further ahead, because I think that the stronger, you know, there's strength in numbers, and I think the stronger our voices, then definitely that's going to help us move forward and get more support from the government, both, you know, federally and provincial and territorial governments.
Well, I wish you good luck. I'm sure.
Thanks.
Well, you'll be working hard. Let me see if we got some questions here.
Great.
All right.
And again, everyone feel free to submit any questions you might have to the Q&A box. That's the white icon that says Q&A in your Zoom toolbar.
Yeah. Okay. The one question I have so far is, are there any positive outcomes you've seen from the impact of COVID?
Well, I guess, as I was saying when I answered the last question, I think the positive thing is people learning to do things in a different way, and having some positive outcomes from that. And then the other thing I think is truly wonderful is to see the collaboration between so many organizations. I mean, the Tourism Roundtable, we've had over 130 organizations sign their names to those letters that we've sent to the Prime Minister and the premiers across this country. And again, bringing everybody together, exchanging ideas and moving forward together. I think those are positive things. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, and I'm not trying to suggest the government has done nothing. Clearly, they moved very quickly at the onset of this. Parliament was not designed to deal with something of this magnitude. There's no question about that. And, there are a number of support programs out there. I know that, it's not enough to completely help us recover from this, but there has been some help out there, and it was deployed fairly quickly considering this is government. I know it seems like it's not moving quickly, but for governments to move that quickly, I think that definitely was a positive outcome.
And I'm not a big fan of politicians, but I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen a government move as quickly on anything in my lifetime, without a study or something like that.
Oh, it's a lot of these things would have taken 2-3 years to put in place, and they were put in place in a matter of weeks. So you do have to say, maybe that's another positive, that government has figured out a way of doing things a little bit differently also, as the industry is doing.
Okay.
And hopefully they'll keep some of those lessons.
I got another question. What is TIAC's official stance on the reopening of the Canada-US border? Do you think it should remain closed for the long term as cases continue to spike in America? And what will be the long-term impacts to our industry, job losses, business closures, be if we cannot open the border?
No, exactly. And that, oh my gosh, that is the $64,000 question. As I said earlier, look, we are asking for government to have a dialogue about this. We understand the situation that's happening in the US, but at the same time, are there opportunities to have safe corridors with certain states? I don't know if that's possible, but we would like to have that dialogue and explore what are the possibilities that could come our way, that because obviously keeping the border closed indefinitely is going to have an absolutely devastating impact on the industry. So yeah.
There's always New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. They've just formed their little bubble, which is looking good.
Yeah.
Nancy Wilson's asking, what kind of help do you think we need to ask the government for? Should they not start allowing us to travel to approved areas and vice versa?
I'm not sure if you're referring to international Canadians traveling internationally, or within Canada. Is that what you're referring to?
I don't know whether I'd assume Canada or the US, but it says approved areas, so that could be either cross-border or in Canada, I would think.
Yeah, cross-border right now is, well, you can fly. There are flights going to the US, but then you would have to quarantine when you return. And in terms of within Canada, of course, it's a bit of a moving target, but definitely there is information on the app in terms of where you can go within the country. But the first part of your question was, what does government need to do? And I think certainly we need some additional financial support for this industry. There's no question. The biggest issue right now is liquidity. We're also waiting impatiently to find out more details about the wage subsidy. We know it's being extended to the end of August. We don't know what the conditions are at this point, and we're hoping to see it extended beyond that also.
Okay, so here's a question for the future. What would you say to any recent tourism grads from colleges, universities, whose careers dreams have been hopefully temporarily quashed?
What would I say to them? I would tell them this is the best industry to work for. It's amazing. I mean, there's so many people who started, out of high school in jobs and who are running companies now, or who've stayed in the industry and continued to grow because they just fell in love with what they did. This is an amazing industry. It's bringing people together. It's telling a story. It's sharing our country's culture, our people, and our beautiful country. So I would absolutely encourage people to pursue a career in this industry. I think it's an amazing industry to work in. And this too will pass.
Good.
Eventually.
Yeah. All right, got a question from Les Kovacs. Interprovincial barriers seem to be declining for an industry like the wine industry. Anything similar from the travel industry aspect? Although wine is a part of travel as well, I guess.
It is.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're talking about, the ability to move product from one province to the next, I'm assuming. As I said, on the travel side, we are seeing definitely some opportunities that are reopening between the provinces, and we're seeing the Atlantic provinces opening up amongst themselves. And there are a number of other provinces who are not prohibiting domestic travelers and who do not have quarantine requirements in place. So I'd invite you to definitely, excuse me, go to the timetotravel.ca website and see where people can actually go from one province to the next, because there is some movement happening now.
Yeah. I think this is more a comment, but you might want to react. The
Sure.
problem with having just a few states open to Canada is that their state could have changes in their numbers, and then you are infecting Canada, or having to make a change to close the borders again. That would be confusing to all and so hard to keep up with. I want travel to come back too, but I think that is why the government is hesitant, because this virus location can change overnight.
Yeah, it is. I'm not going to argue with that, and I'm not saying I'm a hard advocate of doing this right now. I'm just saying I think there needs to be a dialogue, and to say what conditions have to be in place for us to be able to do something like that. What conditions need to be in place for us to reopen the Canada-US border? So we know it's closed until the end of July, but what are going to be the signs and the conditions that need to be in place in order to be able to move forward? And that's the dialogue that I think we do want to have and should be having with the government, so that we all know where we stand and what are they looking for in terms of the signs that it's time to reopen things. I don't think it's 0 cases. I don't think that's a realistic objective, and we saw that even with New Zealand. I think, as I said, this is something we're going to have to live with. It is our new normal. We don't want to do anything irresponsible, and we don't want to put people's lives in danger either. But we should be having a dialogue about what is needed, what are the conditions, and I think that's really the crux of what we're advocating for here.
Charlotte, thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate your
Thank
time,
you.
and good luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I really appreciated this. You're doing great work also, and good luck to our industry, of course, and we're always here for you, so reach out anytime.
Oh.
All right.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. That was excellent.
Great.
So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. We'll take half a minute now to prepare for segment 2, our panel discussion for today. Okay, over to you, Bob. Bob, you are muted. Let me see if we can fix that.
Did myself.
Great, okay.
Apologies, small technical glitch there in my home recording studio. I'm pleased to welcome Tamara Mallon, National Account Manager, Rocky Mountaineer, Darcy Guarderas, Director of Business Development, Anderson Vacations, and Susan Bowman, Vice President in Industry Relations for Transat Distribution Canada. And we're going to talk about Canada. I've got a rail operator, a tour operator, and a travel agency group here. And what I'd like to ask you to do first is set the scene for us. Where are each of your companies in terms of being open for business? And I'm wondering if Darcy, do you want to start?
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob. We are definitely open for business. We do have reduced staffing right now, but we went through that stage of cancellation, and rebook. And now we're starting to see new bookings. So some for actually in the very near future, interprovincial, as the borders are opening up, in between the provinces, but mostly interprovincial. So BC residents traveling within BC, Manitoba residents traveling within Manitoba, and that kind of thing. Lots of bookings coming in right now for 2021, but we're just the most fortunate tour operator because our primary focus is Canada. So we really are well positioned.
Tamara, do you want to talk about Rocky Mountaineer right now?
Sure. We are kind of in a holding pattern, I'd say is the best way to say it, kind of like everyone else. Kind of echoing what Charlotte was saying, with border restrictions, it is very hard to get guests to our train. The actual train itself is just sitting there ready to operate. However, we can't get our guests to it. So we're in a holding pattern for 2020. Currently, we're just suspended or delayed until the end of August, but fingers crossed, we're really hoping for that August 31st departure. Kind of like what Darcy was saying, in the past few weeks, we've really seen our net new bookings for 2021 skyrocket. So of course, we have all the rebooks, and some people are sitting on it. They're cautious, waiting to see what will evolve, and if there is a phase 2, if there is, what will happen, I guess, with the virus long term. But the optimistic part for sure is the net new bookings for 2021, and we even have some into 2022. So there's definitely reasons to believe.
And you haven't had any internal company discussions about sort of, intra-provincial operations where you could operate the service within BC? I mean, I may be talking out of my hat, but
oh no, everything is on the table. Whether we bring back, the train just up to Whistler, the day trip, how we, originally started 30 years ago, interprovincially, everything comes up. It isn't necessarily realistic, to run our cars like that and to run, even just for Canadians or BC residents, because until recently, the border between Alberta, BC wasn't open. So even just going into Alberta and Banff was difficult. We all want it. We put out every bone possible, internally and externally. We hear it all, but I just don't think it's actually feasible. We have to buy track time through the government, right? So it isn't as easy as just kind of flipping the switch and changing our product offering.
Susan, how's things at TDC?
Good afternoon, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. I guess we're fairly bullish right now. We are reopening many of our agencies. As you know, Transat Distribution has a very large network. So we have about a little over 400 travel agencies, bricks and mortar, as well as we have our, of course, at-home group, the independent contractors. At the moment, they've all been working throughout this. We have been in the throes of helping, whether they're our clients, to repatriate them. We've been handling them on their rebookings, and of course, questions. So we've opened in the last couple of weeks over 65 across our network, and more are opening every day. We are advocating to the network and to all of the retail community that when you can, when you're given permission, depending on the stage of your community, you need to be present. You need to be engaged. And you're working anyway. You've probably been working from home. You need to be part of your community. I'll give you a good example of this. We opened a store in British Columbia recently. And as we walked up to it in the morning, I had one consultant, and standing outside were 3 people they've never seen before with masks on, all diligently standing 2 meters apart. And when she opened the agency and went in, they went in one at a time while everyone else waited outside. Each one had never booked there before. Each one had really interesting questions about when they could travel, where they could travel, asked for information. And every single one of them said, when this is over and I can travel, I am coming back to you. So that tells you that there is the value of a travel professional is alive and well, and we need to be present. So we're really excited. We're bullish that the value of a travel agent has never been stronger, and we need to be open. We need to be there.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering for each of you, there are a lot of things, and what the issues are that are slowing recovery. Is it the different rules from province to province, the restrictions on non-essential travel, self-isolation, quarantine in different jurisdictions? I mean, maybe you can start this time, Sue. What's the big, thing that's holding people back?
Well, like everything, it's kind of 3 things. It's confidence to travel. So am I okay? I'm just getting used to the fact that I can get a haircut, let alone go and pack a bag and go somewhere. Economic. I mean, so many people in our country have been so desperately impacted. Our travel industry, no exception. And I think just a willingness to understand that there is opportunity. Travel is looking a bit different right now, and we are certainly focused on, look in your own backyard. I look at Ontario, it's got over 1 million square kilometers. I mean, I can guarantee you most Ontarians have never seen it all. And there are just so many great things that you can go and do. So I think it's about changing the mindset that if you're tired of your 4 walls, if you're feeling pent in, if your kids can't go to camp and you don't know what to do with them, you don't have to be frustrated. There are options out there for you. It might not look like it used to. It might not be getting on an airplane and going somewhere far, far away, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a vacation. So we are very much focused on helping people choose holidays, but just maybe different holidays than they would have thought of before.
Darcy?
I personally have never been busier. And what's really encouraging to me is the number of travel agents, travel professionals, they're so proactively pivoting their businesses and realizing that, okay, now I've got to focus on selling Canada. And literally, I've never been this busy because I'm doing virtual events. I have been doing a virtual event for consumers and travel agents, but the consumer events were through travel agencies. I want to clarify that. Since April 1st, I have not missed a day. So it's encouraging that these travel agents are being so proactive, and it's really obvious to me who's going to succeed. Hopefully all of the travel agencies are going to still be around, but you can really feel the ones that are going after it. So that's really encouraging to me. And the biggest stumbling block for us has just been the borders between the provinces, just waiting for those borders to open up. And now that we're starting to see a little bit of movement there, I can only tell you that we wake up every morning now with a little bit of joy in our step because it's starting to happen.
Tamara?
Well, ours is pretty straightforward. It is definitely borders. It's that simple. Our long haul guests are still our significant portion of our guests. Canada only represents about 15% of our onboard guests. So without Australia, the UK, and in particular the US, we are, like I said, in a holding pattern. We have discussed, as you mentioned, Bob, running just for Canadians, but that too is still dependent on the Atlantic provinces, Ontario, Quebec, everyone else being able to come to BC or Alberta. So until kind of the more whole domestic border opens, we're just in a standstill. It really is that simple. It's not lack of interest, as I mentioned, based on net new bookings and rebookings. It is, as Charlotte said, it is restrictions by the governments.
What about the industry's conventional wisdom that Canada will be the big seller this year? Do you want to comment on that?
I mean, from day one, kind of to Darcy's point, we heard the same thing. You know, I sell Canada. I've only sold Canada. We only have Canadian products. So for me, it's easy to hear that and get excited. I think as an industry, and maybe we'll discuss this a little more later, but as an industry, we have to change our mindset, because as much as we say domestic will be the first to come back, and, you know, small interprovincial trips, that hasn't been the way it typically works within our industry. And we've spent so much time sending people to farther destinations than we have domestic. So I think it is the first to come back, hopefully sooner than later. But I think we'll need to see. I think it's going to take a shift of mindset. And that's what I really am so passionate about doing.
Susan, I know that TDC has done a partnership with Canada.
Yes.
Now, is that the only Canada product you ask? Pardon my ignorance. Or don't laugh so hard.
No, of course not.
You've obviously got more Canada product, and your agencies have sold Canada product over the year. But are they looking at making a pivot? You know, where they're looking more at the domestic market as an opportunity going forward.
Yes.
And what my younger son calls the after times.
Yes. For sure, Bob. Early in this, we recognized that Canada might be a great option for Canadians this year. Obviously, the longer we saw the pandemic was going to stretch out. And we began to search the market for a really interesting product. And one of the things we looked at was the ability to control your own environment, because that's a high radar for a lot of people. That, you know, how do I have a vacation but know that I am going to be, you know, safe, secure, my children will be safe, secure. Canada Dream was a great find for us. Interesting how things turn around. That product line is sold usually to international inbound tourists 2 years in advance. And of course, the parks are sold out well in advance, and gas prices being what they are. And here we are this year. Canada Dream, of course, was canceling all their international contracts as obviously our borders were closed. And we got in touch with them and said, well, we think this could be a great option for Canadians. So you get into a self-contained unit that is sterilized from top to bottom, and off you go. Upon launching that product, we have done a lot of bookings, even for people who are on the road today. Somebody I know rented one even to take to their cottage to use for their guests. People are going all over their province and as far as they can into other provinces as well. So it was one product. We are also signing and about to announce 3 more partners right behind this that also have amazing product, a la carte product, things you can do on your own, again, provide the same kind of environment where you're in control and you can make sure that you're safe while having a fantastic memory. Honestly, Bob, some of the itineraries and things that I have seen make me actually think myself, I don't know why I haven't traveled more in Canada. So it may open people's eyes about what is really possible.
And those 3 new partners are?
Well, we're launching Fresh Tracks right now, a British Columbia-based company. Fresh Tracks offers some itineraries that is just fantastic. And I have 2 more behind this that contracts are sitting to be signed. So I'm going to keep those as a surprise for you in the next few days.
Sorry, for some reason I was muted. What was the second one? Stop now.
Nice try, Bob.
Okay, so The way these things work out is generally you help people out and you send them the questions and whatnot. So I was pleasantly surprised when Tamara sent me a question, said we should talk about this. And Susan and Darcy agreed. I think it's a good point of conversation because we touched on it a little bit with Charlotte. Susan, you've just talked about it, but let me use my 40 years experience, because when I started in the 1980s, the Canadian government had an organization called the Canadian Government Office of Tourism. And they operated like any tourist board you've ever known. They held events for travel agents. They did educationals, they did FAMs, they sold the country, they worked with partners or provincial partners. And agents in this country had a portfolio of Canada products that they have. But I think that over the years, the tourism organization, National Tourism Organization, has spent more time looking at internationally and forgotten the domestic market. So in times like this, making that switch is a little more difficult. And Tamara, I think you wanted to talk about or have a discussion about whether it isn't time for the industry to develop a long-term domestic tourism strategy that enlists the traditional tour operator and travel agent in selling Canada. So do you want to talk about that? Start the ball rolling. And Darcy and Susan, I would say, if you guys want to have a conversation between yourselves, have a conversation. I'll jump in if you need direction, although I'm sure you won't. Tamara?
I guess depending who all your participants are, this isn't new to them. They've heard me talk about this. Darcy's talked about it a lot. Darcy and I both talk about this a lot, but it is completely a mindset. I mean, I always say I have a very difficult job. I'm selling Canada to Canadians, and I'm selling luxury product. We just, as an industry, have moved away from domestic travel, and it's of no fault of anyone's. But if you reel things back, as airlines stopped paying commission for air, especially domestic air, people started to book it themselves, or they were hesitant to come to a travel agent to book, a Vancouver-Toronto flight because they had to pay a service fee, which was new in our industry at the time. So they slowly got used to doing it themselves. And then from there, of course, was the advent of the OTAs, which made it simple to book your 2-night Whistler hotel. So now we've taken away the domestic air. We've taken away the short weekend getaway hotels. And so as a whole, as an industry, we just kind of got away from selling or promoting Canada. I mean, if you walk into the vast majority of travel agencies, even if you look around the walls, there's very little that promotes Canada. You'll see a picture of the Eiffel Tower, you'll see a cruise poster, you'll see definitely winter sun product, but you see very little that would make a consumer think, oh, right, I could book my Canadian trip here. And then as well, just if you ask most agencies, so I can say Susan and TDC Group has done a fabulous job. They've always been a strong Rocky Mountaineer partner. And we have lots of great partners out there. But I'm curious, as a percentage of their business, domestic Canada product, not just Rocky Mountaineer, so Anderson's awesome escorted group tours out east, whatever it may be, what percentage of their overall business is actually domestic? I'd be shocked if it was, 10, even 5% for most. So I just think it will take a mind shift. Now we've started, everyone's bringing on new product. They are thinking Canada, but my big ask is that this doesn't end when a vaccine happens, or this doesn't end next year when the confidence to travel is back. We need to keep this in the forefront. And you even said it yourself, Bob, you're shocked about how many great places there are to travel. So I think it's a conversation that we can't just end right here, right now. I want to be sitting on this panel next year, seeing a huge spike for domestic travel being marketed, being discussed, the consumers having confidence walking into any single agency or calling their travel professional and saying, you know what, I've always wanted to do Atlantic Canada. Can you help me? Or I've always wanted to join Rocky Mountaineer. I mean, I have to put my plug in there. But we need we need to keep this going. And that is the part that I know many people have heard me say for a long time, but I don't want it just to end right now or when this pandemic ends.
Darcy, do you want to jump in?
I sure do. Okay, so I agree with a lot of things Tamara says. We talk about this a lot. So at Anderson Vacations, over 90% of our bookings are made by Canadians to Canadian destinations. That's the truth. Now, of those 90% of those bookings, how many agencies are doing that? Probably 10% of the agencies in Canada. So we have incredible supporters, and those supporters are grasping the fact that Canada is an amazing destination. Having been an agent myself for 25 years prior to this role, I got to the end of my travel agent career and my clientele started getting older. So I needed to broaden what I was selling, because those clients, as they got older, they didn't want to stop traveling. They just didn't want to go quite so far away from home. So I started to engage with selling Canada and became really actively involved in selling Anderson Vacations and became their top selling person because I just loved it. I've had this passion for Canada, and I feel like it oozes out of me because I feel that way. And the travel agents who grasp that and work with us, they're successful. It's educating your clients, letting them know that you offer this product. And the proactive agencies that are doing that are successful in doing that. And I really think it's important for our travel agent partners to know and understand is that we are travel agent centric. We have been focused on Canadian travel agents forever, for over 26 years. There are some new players in the game, for sure. They're offering some Canadian product, but I want you to do your research and find out how they work with travel agents. If they work with travel agents at all, or have they in the past? Have they ever supported travel agents? Because in many cases, that's not the case. So it's never been more important than to shop local, to support local, and we'll support you if you support us. So we've got incredible product. And I think right now it's a pivoting moment, like Tamara said, and we want it to continue. It will continue. And as that starts to grow, then we can share incredible. We have the RV rentals, the self-drives, all the products you can possibly want in one place. So it's an exciting time for us.
How does TD see things, Susan?
Well, I agree with Darcy and Tamara for sure. I think Canada's here to stay, and this is a product we need to stay focused on. And I love the fact that whenever there's a dark side, hopefully you can find some light. And I think focusing on Canada is one of them. I would say, Bob, though, I have been surprised and challenged that I have gone to the government for support. I have given them everything that we are doing. So we are massively training and educating our network. We are spending money on marketing and promoting products. All the while we have been making for months no revenue. And yet when I went to the government with their announcement of their $30 million to promote Canada and that they would spend it domestically now, they have told me that they do not work with the trade. They do not work with the Canadian industry. It's quite a shock to me that the people who are doing the work and selling are the people that they will not support. So they would not support us with any training support. They would not support us with any co-op marketing dollars. They would not collaborate with us on our programs. And I want you to know that as we lobby to the government to support our industry, I think this has to get in the foreground of they need to understand how the industry operates. So that was, I think, the biggest challenge and surprise that I've had during this. I thought they would have said, thank goodness, 3,000 people going to support Canada. Wow, we'll be right there to hold your hand and work with you. And they turned us down flat. So shame on them.
I'm just wondering if any of you have or would think of approaching ACTA to get them to help you lobby, or to talk to, other tour operators, other agency groups. I mean,
trust me, Bob. I am making the rounds.
To be honest,
I have many people on speed dial.
And we've only sold to Canada for 30 years, so this isn't new for us. We have found great support from DMOs and from other partners. it is just all around a shift as well. It's also a shift to the end user, the consumer, because we can do all this advocacy, but we need to shift. And I think it is happening, but we need to shift just the end user's thought of what to them is travel, what to them is a priority. I mean, so many people come here, for example, to see Niagara Falls, to see the Rocky Mountains. It's in the wonders of the world, but yet so many of us actually take the time to see what is so internationally prized about our country, because we're busy going to see the Eiffel Tower that reopened today, or whatever it is that we think is so prized. So it's not just an industry shift, it will be a consumer shift too.
I mean, that's the other thing I've heard too, is that consumers tend to look at Canada as a do-it-yourself kind of destination, and you know, it's in the industry, it's kind of managed versus unmanaged travel, and it's trying to connect those dots. I'm also wondering if it takes a different size of tour operator to serve the Canadian market, Darcy, because Anderson is not like a mega mass market operator. You're a tour operator of a certain size.
Yeah, we're not a large business. We're quite small, and we're very focused. And I think that's the difference. And the fact that we've been doing it for so long, we have specialists who understand the product, and our staff have traveled to not all, but as many Canadian destinations as we can possibly get them to. So that's really important too. But you know, I've walked into many travel agencies, excuse me, and I've had travel agents say to me, my clients don't book Canada with me, or I just don't sell Canada. And it's a matter of changing their perspective. Not only, excuse me, not only the travel agents are just opening their mind up and saying, yeah, you can. There's never been a better time. Travel professionals have never been more important than now, having been through COVID and some of them being stranded and having to rely on travel professionals to help them. There's awareness now in the marketplace for clients. They're nervous. They know they need to work with travel professionals, and the travel professionals need to let the consumers know by promoting Canada and allowing us to help them to promote Canada that, hey, we've got this amazing product. We've got these Northern Lights experiences, or do you want to sleep in an igloo? Do you want to do something that's really unique and different? Just letting them know that these options are available to them through their travel professional.
Can I make a really quick point to that?
Sure, you can make a long point too.
No. So we sell through all different tour operators, as an example. So as a Canadian product, what happens is when you go through the big players, to your point, we get lost in the noise because they do sell everything else. They sell Europe, they sell Winter Sun, they sell everything. So when we partner with Anderson, for example, without a doubt, our top tour operator partner, that's all they do, and they do it really well. So they're not kind of blurring the lines. So I don't think size matters in this case. I think it's a shift in general. It's not based on the partners, because we're not lacking for any partners out there. And the big partners have tried it. They used to sell Canada. They all got away from it. They didn't see it as profitable or viable. And then they've slowly been trying to get back in. And I'm sure we'll see them trying to heavily get back in. But again, it kind of gets lost in the noise when they're busy selling the world.
All right. I guess before we go to questions from the audience, I'm just wondering if you have suggestions for next steps. I mean, where could you take it? Where could you go? You said you went to the government, Susan. Was that Destination Canada, or was that the federal government?
It was Destination Canada.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe talk to Charlotte.
You bet.
Well, have you already made?
I watched your last segment and wrote this down.
Oh, geez, I've got a fan. All right, so are you ready for questions?
Sure.
Absolutely.
There's a lot. I gotta scroll down. Just let me catch up. Oh, great presentation while driving, Darcy. I got one person said. I'm reading everything. Susan and Darcy, do you think one of the positive impacts of COVID-19 will be that consumers will flock to travel agents to book travel, as they may need more guidance and have more questions about insurance, health, and safety? Could this be a renaissance for travel agents? Susan, Darcy?
Can I take it, Darcy?
Absolutely, go ahead.
We
You
both
jump in.
take it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We can see it now during this last 110 days or whatever it's been now. We've been finding that clients that may have not been in the agency or spoken with their travel professional in months are coming back into the agencies. We're finding that people who've never booked with us but had a problem with travel have said, I talked to my friend and they told me to call you because you know everything about this. We have never been more valued, and I am so pleased to be recognized. Travel professionals have to know so much information, and they take such great care with their clients. It's incredible. And during this crisis, it's never shown up more. I mean, the hours that they have worked on clients' files and worked with them to make sure that they are home safe or comfortable or understand, and booking conditions have been changing. And it's just so important that we recognize and consumers recognize the value of a travel professional. I don't think it's ever been stronger. And its legacy right now, how many people sat on hold for hours, days during the peak of this without answers and totally frustrated because they didn't have a travel professional. So I think the value of a travel professional has never been more validated. And we will see the resurgence of that coming out of this for sure.
Darcy, anything to add?
I 100% agree with Susan. And I think that the strong will survive. And I applaud those agencies that are being proactive. The fact that Susan, that you're going after all of this is fabulous, because I can see it on a daily basis. I know who the agencies are in the industry that are going to really not only survive, but thrive, because they've embraced it. They've embraced the fact that they've got to sell Canada, and they're putting stuff out there, and they're looking for creative solutions. And that's what we're here for, is to help them with that.
Tamara, there's a question for you. When is Rocky Mountaineer accepting new bookings for? And are you offering any promotions or incentives for agents and or consumers? It seems like Rocky Mountaineer would be poised to be one of the first to be able to come back because they can offer a certain amount of guest isolation. Huh. Did you get all that?
Yes. Well, thank you for that question. I feel like that was almost planted, but it wasn't. So right now, when we can operate for 2020, it is going to look different. So we really aren't accepting new bookings for 2020, because the guests that have chosen to continue to travel for the fall season on, we're just going to move forward with all of our new safety and protocol with those guests on board, because we are going to now reduce our capacity. So where a car might have held 70 guests, it'll hold 34. So for this year, we're just going to, walk ourselves through that learning process. 2021 and 2022 are open for sale. They actually have been for some time. And we do have our best market offer available for 2021. So we don't go on sale. We're very proud of that. We believe that our product warrants it, and we shouldn't discount it at any time, but we have great value add. So our best promo is available. We also, like many other partners, have a $25 refundable deposit. So for people who are hesitant, and for agents who just want to start booking again, they're just sitting there, they want to reactivate their life. It gives them the ability to say to their clients, Bob and Mary, Rocky Mountaineer has always been on your list. They have this great promotion, and you can book it for $25 per person. So I think we've put the tools out there, and we are really looking forward to, of course, 2021. And we're looking forward to hosting our guests when we can this season. We're just not ready to take on new bookings because we're not sure what this season is going to look like yet.
Here's another one. Yes, yes, yes to promoting domestic travel. Love your passion on this topic, Tamara, but it's so expensive. How can the industry come together to make it more affordable for Canadians to travel within Canada? I think you might all want to take a shot at this one. Do you want to start, Tamara?
Darcy's probably even more passionate about this particular one than me. It's a mindset. I mean, I personally, I don't think it is that expensive. If we were to take the level of properties across Canada, the different tourist spots and products, and look at that when we put it in the context of a Europe, of a South America, of an Africa, we're at par. It's just that we think because we live here, it should cost less. And so it's just a changing of a mindset. We aren't higher or more expensive than any other tourist destination for the most part, but we just think that it should be inexpensive. It's kind of like airfare. You know, people complain that it's expensive, so then fine, you don't have to pay for your luggage. Now you're going to have to try and force it in the overhead bin, and it just doesn't work. So when you start reducing prices and thinking of it as a cheap destination, then you actually start losing the value that it has to offer. I'll let Susan and Darcy speak about it, but that's an objective that I'm happy to give great detail on, but I don't buy into that.
Darcy?
I 1000% agree with you on that. Gone are the days that we used to drive with our parents. I mean, we're all sort of in the same age group. We used to drive with our parents and you could stop for a hotel room for $49. And even you've got that thing in your head, like Canada's cheap. It's not cheap. It's a great value. And it's no more expensive than any other destination in the world. It's mindset. 100% I agree with Tamara. It's mindset. And it's really up to the travel professionals to train their clients. If you really think about it, how often as a travel professional do you bring up Canada when people ask for a destination? I often in my trainings say to agents, you know what, when someone asks you about going to the US, do you ever think of cross-selling them to Canada? Instead of sending them down to the coast of Oregon, why aren't you sending them to Vancouver Island and to Tofino and selling them in the Canadian dollar and having a local Canadian experience where you're supporting local? And as soon as the agent grabs that, they run with it. So it's just really our mindset as professionals and working with the clients to get them to understand it, that we're here for them.
Susan, I can hear you saying, well, Bob, it may look expensive at first, but think of it this way. Do you want
Okay, that's a good lead in, Bob.
I tried to.
And add to that, I think one way to demonstrate this for anyone looking at Canada is simply add the exchange rates. So, what is a hotel room in New York and add the exchange rate? What is a hotel room in Paris and add the exchange? I mean, it's incredible value to stay in your own country. I mean, really, and you can shop like anything for travel at every level. So if you're a budget-minded consumer, there are budget-minded options. So I agree with my colleagues that I think Canada has amazing value, and you just need to show people the options. It's like buying any holiday anywhere in the world. It isn't more expensive. It isn't less expensive. It's the mindset. I agree.
And for many, insurance can be a large savings too, because for some people traveling internationally or going to the US, sometimes insurance is prohibitive. So when you kind of look at getting an inexpensive cruise out of Miami, you're spending, $700-800 each, the exchange rate, the onboard spend, and then insurances for some guests, you back that out. And then you really realize, yeah, actually we are affordable.
Peggy Zorn at EcoTours BC writes that as a tour operator that works with companies like John View and others, we were surprised that no one was calling to all their suppliers to come together with them to get government to support the industry. Thank you, Susan, for pointing this out. So I don't know whether you want to comment on that or it's...
No, just thank you. More the merrier.
This is from Ariane. She's asking, the key to get travel agents to advocate for selling Canada is the resources to access product and educate them on that. I mean, I don't know where you want to start on that. Do you see that as a potential issue? Darcy?
I don't see that as an issue at all. I mentioned earlier that we've been really proactive in trainings and things, and I've been doing virtual events every day. So we do offer incredible trainings. If you sign up to our website, andersonvacations.ca, we do have all kinds of opportunities. We're currently doing semi-weekly happy hours where we get together, and they started out, and they still are, really just inspirational 35 to 45-minute events, hugely popular. We're doing one this evening. In fact, we get anywhere from around 60 to 120 agents on board. Again, this is inspirational, but when the time comes to really start learning to do the hard sell, we do those as well. And I work with individual consortias and agencies directly and do trainings all day, every day. So we're here. If you feel like reaching out to us, we'd be more than happy to work with you to do some in-depth training, because once you know where to go and what to sell, we've got the product. We can work together on that.
Susan, you've always been big on training and resources and whatnot.
Yeah, so Darcy's right. Our partners are being tremendously helpful. I'll once again complain, though, that I asked the government for help in training, which they don't offer. I found that really interesting. So they don't train their own retail community, even tour operators, on domestic products. So it's something that we've taken on along with our partners and tried to build a suite of training. So we probably have webinars 3 times a week right now. We're in front of our network, and many of those right now are on Canada product.
Karen Leva's question for Darcy: what do you think will be the top regions for Canadians in Canada in the near future?
So I truly think, because we're going into fall, we do have some tours that we're hoping to run in the fall in Eastern Canada. What we've done is we've taken some of our existing small group fully escorted tours, and we're really conscious of the safety aspects with regards to COVID. So those should be running in the fall. But going into the winter, we think we'll really ramp it up with the Northern product. The Northern Lights product will be a big seller. As of right now, we're doing some self-drives within each province, BC, Alberta, some in the east as well, RV rentals and so on. So, but I really think that when it really starts to ramp up will be this winter with the Northern product for the chill seekers.
Okay, good. Sarab writes, Rocky Mountaineer is the pride of Canada and one of the most luxurious experiences on the planet. Really hope the trains are up and running soon. Tamara?
Yes, thank you. So do we.
There you go.
Start running. I should say that. We need to get guests to the trains.
This is, how do we get the message out to consumers about the value of travel professionals in a post-COVID world? Any suggestions or plans you're working on? How do we work on this messaging as an industry as a whole? Because I don't think that message is getting to the consumer. You want to start, Tamara? We'll go back.
And actually, it's a good point, and it kind of goes to what Susan was speaking about. I think because we work a lot with DMOs, so tourism boards, they spend a lot of time doing their marketing to long haul guests. Right. They're not the ones who are actually training our travel professionals. They're training the professionals in the UK. So I think we've seen it. I mean, I live in BC, but the BC tourism has incredible commercials on TV right now to kind of start escalating it within our province. I think you'll see a shift, a mindset from the Canadian tourism partners to start promoting it. The one thing I would say about COVID that's a positive is it has changed how people access information. So even if you think about seniors who weren't maybe the most digital before, they've all learned to use Zoom. They've learned to use Facebook. They've learned to use FaceTime, whatever it is, to keep in touch with their families. So now they're a little more comfortable. So I just can't stress enough, social media is the easiest, least expensive, and the fastest way for all of us to get the message out there. From inspirational videos to, travel talk times, Susan getting one of your agents and talking about, she's here for you, for us to talk about our product. I actually think it's very simple. And right now, more eyes than ever are on it. So it's just a matter of getting onto platforms with different partners and utilizing their social and pushing it out to your own. And if you're new at it, it's fine, because a lot of people are new out there using it. I think you're going to see changes going forward. You're going to see the idea of brochures kind of slipping off because, again, different markets have learned to become more interactive, hosting events like this. I think you'll actually just see a change within the industry as a whole, and then it's up to us to kind of promote it and continue pushing it forward.
Susan?
I agree with what Tamara just said. We're using social media. So we have a sort of campaign every single month promoting the value of a travel agent, using inspiration and kind of the value that they can add to that experience. And we make these available to our network. They're feeding them into their own fan bases, as well as boosting them on to other consumers. And then we're mirroring that also with a lot of virtual events. So I agree. You need to kind of create the kind of message and then nurture it through all the platforms that you have. And it's amazing how it grows. So you can start with 100 people and then the next thing you know, it's reached 1,000 people. So we just need to do that. And as I said before, we also need to be present in our communities. The value of a travel agent is best demonstrated when they actually walk the talk and people actually see, and that word of mouth begins. So we find that we need to get, our travel professionals as visible as possible. So we've done a lot of things around that, from a Find My Travel Professional software that we built that profiles all their skills and what they can offer. And we will push that out to consumers as often as possible. It's important for sure. So you need to get over your own ego and promote yourself. A lot of us as Canadians are shy to do that. It feels very boastful, but the truth is you have to talk about what you can do to enhance somebody, how you can look after them. We need to be way more vocal than I think we've ever been before.
Darcy, you're muted.
I think utilizing this downtime, taking advantage of the fact that people aren't generally as busy, and all the social media stuff, 100% agree with that. But some of my most successful agents are going old school. And you know what they're doing right now? They're picking up the phone and they're calling clients and they're saying, "How are you? Are you okay?" Mm-hmm. And showing them that they care. And that, just reconnecting with people that way, even if it is a phone call, having the time to do that is just a simple thing, but connects you with those people. And you have the opportunity to say to them, "Hey, you know what, when things start to move, when we start to feel more confident and you start to feel more secure, let's get together. Let's talk about traveling within Canada, within our own spectacular backyard."
That's all the questions I have. There's one question for you, Susan, asking, where can I sign up for the webinars? It's Lila Jakovsky. Okay. I'm glad I made you laugh.
Love it.
Listen, thank you very much. I expect to see you parading in front of the Parliament building in Ottawa with your signs up, support Canadian travel, Canadian travel trade. But keep in touch. Let me know if you're going to take this somewhere, because I'd be happy to continue to follow. It's a great idea. It's a long time coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Thank you so much, Tamara, Darcy, and Susan for joining us. That was fantastic. We'll take a minute now to prepare for segment 3, our case study on Motorhome Travel Canada. If anyone would like to take a quick break to grab a drink of water or anything, you have a minute to do so now. Hi, Harry. I can see you're there. How's it going?
Good so far. Thanks.
Fantastic. Great. I'll kick off this segment in just about 30 seconds.
You got it.
So to round out today's webcast, we'll have a quick jaunt into the world of motorhome travel with Harry Patel, General Manager of Motorhome Travel Canada. How are you today, Harry?
Great, thanks. Glad to be here with you guys.
Great. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. We'll be emailing any questions that you guys might have for Harry to him following the presentation. Feel free to ask away, and Harry or a member of his team will follow up with you in the coming days. Now, with that out of the way, can you give us a bit of a background on Motorhome Travel Canada, Harry?
Thanks, Dan. Certainly I can. We sell, rent, and service luxury motorhomes, catering to several overseas and domestic markets. We work very closely also with the film and television production companies in Toronto and the GTA. We've been in business for just over 17 years, and over the years developed a strong commitment for customer service. We consider all our employees customer service specialists, and you can feel confident recommending Motorhome Travel Canada to your clients. For example, something like what we do is a concierge service where on a 7-day booking, and if you're flying in, we're offering clients transportation to and from Pearson pre and post rental. And that way they don't have to navigate on their own in the GTA.
That's great. I'm sure clients will really appreciate that. I mean, it can be pretty daunting if you're unfamiliar with the area. And speaking of Pearson, you are pretty close to the airport, right?
Yes, our address is 14124 Highway 50 in Bolton, Ontario. So that's just about 30 minutes north of Toronto Airport, and I would say about an hour away from Toronto.
That's great. So can you give us a quick rundown on the pickup and drop-off process? Have there been any procedural changes due to COVID-19?
Sure. Pickups generally are placed in the afternoon. Once the client arrives, we do our best to set them up, ready to go as quickly as possible, of course. We're always happy to address all questions or concerns before we send them on their way. Drop-offs generally very much like a hotel stay, which if you do back at 11 a.m. The scheduled return. During reservations process, we take full transfer to the COVID. Clients can rest assured that we're following all Health Canada's safety protocols. All our motorhomes are cleaned, extensively disinfected, and remain dormant for a minimum of 24 hours before they go out again.
That is great for peace of mind. Can you give us some insight on the freedom that Motorhome Travel provides?
And Motorhome is considered one of the safest travel experiences, particularly if your clients are concerned about the pandemic. It's the only method of travel where you can remain isolated with your family in your own environment. Clients have flexibility to travel and take in sites across the entire country, whether it's the lighthouses of PEI or Rocky Mountains out west. They can take in breathtaking views without having concerning themselves with crowded planes or hotel attractions. They all have full control on it.
That's amazing. And although global travel is showing signs of recovery, it seems as though we've maybe still got a ways to go until international travel resumes. For Canadians looking to travel domestically, are there any advantages for clients looking to book a motorhome vacation?
You know, admittedly, it's been difficult for our industry, particularly for anyone flying internationally. You know, there is a silver lining that inventory that would usually be reserved for clients coming from overseas is now available for Canadians who want to experience an RV vacation from home. It's also allowed Canadians to recognize the beauty that's right on our doorstep and restored some of the appreciation of our country and our fellow Canadians. We're proudly Canadian owned and operated, and really enjoy serving and supporting our Canadian clientele.
That's great, Harry. Can you tell us a bit about the motorhomes you carry specifically?
We carry the exclusively in Ontario the Coachman RV product. So that would be the Leprechaun, Murata Select, and Pursuit brands. And when we order these motorhomes, they're ordered with the full luxury package. So the family can actually enjoy glamping, as they call it. And they really are a sight to see.
That sounds lovely, and they look great from what I've seen. How many do you own?
We have a fleet of 100 motorhomes for rent with sizes ranging from 24 feet to 37 feet. Our Class C motorhomes that are like the Ford van with the cab over, we have sizes like 24-foot, 28-foot, and 30-foot vehicles accommodating from 4 to 9 people. And then we have the bus type that are anywhere from 30 feet, 35 feet, or 37 feet. They call them Class A's. And they also will accommodate anywhere from 4 to 9 people, and seat belts, sleeping arrangements, and so on and so forth.
Sounds like a really wide selection. That's great. For someone who's completely unfamiliar with RV sizing and classes, which option would be best for families or for executives or for retirees?
Sure thing, Dan. Generally, like the C class, which are smaller, they usually work best for small to medium-sized families. Executives tend to prefer the Class A, which is the bus type. And then retirees can make good use of all types. We've got a wide range of motorhomes that suit every family.
And here's a question that our audience really wants to know. What kind of travel agent incentives do you offer?
It's a great question. Travel agents receive 10% commission on all rentals they book, which can really add up quickly, particularly due to the restrictions on international travel now. Like motorhome vacation can be very worthwhile booking. We're happy that to work with travel agents and help customer itineraries, assist during planning and execution, recommending unique vacations across the country. We want both the agent and the client to have the best experience possible, and would love to hear from the agents across Canada.
And are there any special discounts or promotions?
Absolutely. If you're booking for a large group, we'll be happy to discuss volume discounts. In addition to the 10% on all bookings, we also offer what's called the first night coupon, or travel agent partners to pass to their clients as a booking incentive. Will cover the cost of the first or the last night at a campground.
Great. That sounds like you've established a really great incentive system here. You mentioned help with building itineraries. What's a good resource for little-known Ontario or Canadian RV-based journeys that you would suggest?
Our website, motorhometravel.com, has sample 5-day, 7-day, 10-day, 14-day, and 21-day itineraries, and links to all relevant campsites. It's an excellent place to plan and explore before you set out on the road. As the travel agent community well knows, Canada is full of amazing picturesque destinations. Some personal favorites are Laurentians, Tadoussac, Huntsville, the entire East Coast and West Coast, of course, for that matter. If you're looking for great attractions, Ontario is probably a resource to find out things to see through Ontario. And for campgrounds, KOA is probably the biggest campsite venue in the country. You can plan your trip in confidence and knowing that they have they're pretty much everywhere.
That sounds wonderful. And lastly, we're going to be wrapping things up pretty soon. How can we agents get in contact with you?
You can reach us, get quotes, pricing, itineraries by visiting our website, which is motorhometravel.com, or you can call us toll free, 1-877-228-2218.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Harry, for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And that pretty much wraps up day 3 of Travel Webcast Week. So from all of us here at Baxter Media and our friends at Motorhome Travel Canada, and all speakers and organizations who took time to participate over the last 3 days, thank you all so much. We look forward to welcoming you back very soon.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.